everybody to Northland MUFON's first meeting. What are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are personally. What is the Mutual UFO Network, or MUFON? How Northland became Northland. How you guys can get involved if you'd like to. And the fun part is we're going to talk about some cases of interest in the area here. And then we're going to take a little break, 10 minutes or so. And after that, we'll do the door prize drawings. And then there'll be time for Q&A. Who am I? I am the North Dakota State Director for MUFON. Born and raised in Minnesota, went to NDSU, graduated from MSUM, so I'm pretty local here, although I've lived for quite a while in the Twin Cities. I have a BSN degree and I'm a public health nurse. And I do have a history of working as a clinical laboratory technician. I've been seeing UFOs and weird stuff in the sky my entire life. Don't have an explanation for it. And that's really what got me interested in joining MUFON. I became a certified field investigator back in 2018. And I'm also on the executive committee of MUFON's ERT team, it stands for Experiencer Resource Team. And that's, unlike a field investigator, it's a little different. We're really there as a resource for people who are having some challenges with things that they see. And so, Jared, I'll let you introduce yourself.
My name is Jerry Nelson, retired warrant officer. Used to fly Apache gunships in the Army, maintenance test pilot. I am still a commercial pilot flying helicopters. Have a master's in aviation science. I got almost 40 years of aviation experience. 22 of that in the military, 17 plus doing. I'm also a field investigator and a member of the ERT, Experience Resource Team, and also a member of the CAG, which is the Case Assistance Group, which is if there's other states that have too many cases that they can't handle, they'll send a call out to the Case Assistance Group, and I'm just one of those people, and I'll just help out with that. So that's me.
What is MUFON? Jared and I were both actually kind of surprised when we started this venture that a lot of people didn't even know who we were. MUFON stands for...
know who MUFON is? Okay, few of you? All right, that's fine. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
MUFON stands for the Mutual UFO Network. And it was originally started as the Midwest UFO Network. And that included areas, including Minnesota in the Midwest. But it really started to grow in the 70s. And at some point, they did change the name to the Mutual UFO Network so that it was more broad-based. MUFON is both the oldest and the largest UFO organization in the world. And we have over 600 volunteers worldwide.
If you want to know more about Minnesota MUFON, which is kind of where all this started, if you go to the website, northlandmufon.com, go to the About section, click on the Minnesota icon there. There's Tori Nelson did a really good write-up on there. It's about 1,000 pages long. I'm kidding. It's probably about 2 or 3 pages long, but it's got a lot of good info on there.
What was that again, Northland?
Northlandmufon.com. I encourage everybody to go there. In the future, we're thinking about having the meetings via Zoom in case the weather's really cruddy outside, or just open up to more people that just can't get here. And that's where you would get the link to that. So northlandmufon.com. Check it out.
Our mission statement is a scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humanity. And within MUFON, we have 3 main goals. First is to investigate UFO sightings and collect data in the MUFON database. And we want to do that because just investigating doesn't really help us understand this better. We want to be able to have researchers take a look at the data and try and come up with some conclusions based on that data. Our second goal is to promote research on UFOs to discover the true nature of the phenomenon, because honestly, we don't really know what it is, right? And then our third goal is one of the things that we're doing today and with these meetings, and that's to educate the public on the UFO phenomena and its potential impact on society. As you probably know, there are many groups, Facebook groups, things like that. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of crazy stuff out there. And so what we want to do as a group is really take that information, pick through it, and make sure it's scientifically validated. What is Northland MUFON? Well, as you can see, it's a co-chapter between North Dakota MUFON and Northern Minnesota MUFON. It's a little tough to see on the screen there, but you can see that yellow line going through the state of Minnesota. The reason for that is that both Jared and I live in Jared lives in, and it's quite the drive to the Twin Cities. And Minnesota has had a large chapter, very vibrant for many, many years, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But it really wasn't accessible to people up here in the Northland. And so we decided to form Northland MUFON because of that. It's not just Jared and I. We do have a team. We have Dale Brown. He's a board member. He's the former state director for North Dakota. And we'll talk a little bit about him in just a minute. He's out in McCluskey, so he's not too far away from Bismarck. And then Sherry Odenbach is our secretary and on our board, and she's in Watford City. So both of our board members are out in the western area of North Dakota. We're looking for more people. We could really use some additional help, and we'll talk about that as well. A little bit about North Dakota and our chapter history. Unfortunately, before 2007, 2008, we really don't have a lot of information about the chapter. We know that there's been chapters here. We don't know really what they did with those chapters. We don't know if they had regular meetings. And we weren't able to get a hold of those people that originally formed those chapters. But around 2008, Larry Gessner reconstructed the chapter. He's out in McCluskey. And one interesting thing about Larry is that he was featured on the show Unidentified. I don't know if any of you have heard that show, but it stars Lou Elizondo. And Lou actually came out to his house and did a whole segment. And you can see that on the History Channel. The season 1, episode 5 is what that is. It's really interesting, actually. Dale Brown ended up taking over for Larry in around 2009, 2008. And they had their first meeting in January of that year. He was able to recruit and train 8 field investigators all around the state of Minnesota. And he had monthly meetings in Bismarck, actually. And unfortunately, his health took a turn and he wasn't able to manage the chapter anymore. And it did dissolve back in 2017. He's doing better now. And that's why he's joined our board. And we're really happy to have him. Who is this guy? This is Bill McNeff. And he's an important part of Minnesota's chapter history. He began as state director in 1986 and started the first in-person meetings down in the Twin Cities. He has served in many capacities, and he's currently our chief investigator in Minnesota. He just celebrated his 90th birthday not that long ago, and he's still going strong. And we recently honored him and all of his service, over 70 years actually, in the field. And that's a picture of him at that celebration. Currently in Minnesota, the state director is Tom Maher. We are a nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3 pending organization, so donations should be tax deductible. If any of you or anybody that you know would like to support us and want to use that to your taxes, please let us know in advance before the donation. We'll make sure you get the receipt that you need for that. Why would anybody want to donate to us? That's a great question. It is tax deductible and it helps cover our operating costs. Those include our online presence. That includes continuing to develop our website and maintaining our website, the Zoom fees, things so people know that we exist. Fees for speakers is a big one. We definitely want to have really great speakers for people. That requires money, especially if they're in person, then we have transportation and lodging costs as well. The meeting rooms, this luckily is free, which is why we're here today. There is a fee associated in Grand Rapids, and we're not really sure what room we're going to be using going forward. There's time discrepancies with using this room, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And equipment that we might need, refreshments, and just the usual costs. So we welcome your donations, not required at all. But yeah, how can you donate? Cash. Cash is king, obviously. There's a little donation box. It's free will, again. Check, Zelle, Venmo. We've got many different ways. Through our website, there's going to be a Facebook donation button soon. Those are all ways that you can do that. Do you want to get involved with Northland MUFON? I know we have one person here that does. How do you go about doing that? Well, the first step is probably becoming a member. Do we have any members here? You're a member? We got one? Great.
Right.
We're really glad to have you. And you can just do that at the main MUFON website. So it's MUFON.com. And there's membership options. I think the cheapest one is $59 a year. You don't need anything spectacular. Another way is to just come and attend meetings with like-minded people. So we have meetings set up for the next few months at least. And we have one guest speaker already lined up for our next meeting. Another way you can become involved is become a certified field investigator. I know we have a lot of people that ask us questions about that and how to do that, so we're going to talk about that for a minute. Also, on the table there is a card if you have any interest. How do you become a field investigator? Well, first step, you have to join MUFON. The second step would be to purchase the manual, and I believe it's $125 now.
35 attacks.
Is it 35 attacks? Okay. Which sounds like a lot, but it covers the book, it covers the testing, it covers the background check, the ID, it covers everything. So you don't have to worry about any other expenses after that. Once you're done reading through that manual, you'd want to take the test on what we have. It's called MUFON University. And then there's some requirements that you submit paperwork for your background check. We want to make sure that our field investigators are vetted. We don't want to send our field investigators out not knowing what their background is. We want to make sure that they're safe and vetted. So once this is done, you'd be designated as a trainee, assigned a member, or a mentor, and you can start doing cases.
Is that all online?
It can be, you can either get a hard copy of the book or you can get an online version of it.
And I would get that through the website.
Yes, you get that through MUFON.com.
Okay. Will do.
Okay, anybody else?
So don't want to be a field investigator? Not a problem. We've got other ways that you can get involved with us. We could really use some technical assistance.
We can
Jared and I are not very technical, and especially since we're going to be moving to a different venue, and we're wanting to add a Zoom option for people at home, especially with the roads. We really want to be able to have that option, but we don't know how to do that, honestly. So we could really use some help in that area. Volunteering at our meeting with setup and takedown, refreshments, things like that. We are seeking a treasurer for our group. So if you have a background in accounting or banking or anything related to that, and you want to get involved, we'd love to hear from you. And as we grow, so will the opportunities to help out. Our monthly meetings. If you didn't already know, this is a co-meeting between the Moorhead location and Grand Rapids, Minnesota. Up there in the corner, you can see Jared. He is my co-director, and he is running the meeting in Grand Rapids at the Y. Our next meeting will be January 20th, and the time will be adjusted a little earlier in the day. It will be here in the Moorhead lower level at the library, and then at the Y again in Grand Rapids. We're thinking probably noon will be our next start time. We've been having a challenge, like I mentioned earlier, with finding a room rental that will accommodate our days and times for both of us. So our guest speaker on that day will be Rich Hoffman. Rich, oh my gosh, Rich is rich with UFO history and knowledge. Really, he is. He was heavily involved with MUFON for many years. He's a lifetime member. He is now the director of the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, which is a think tank based in Alabama. He lives down in Huntsville, Alabama. So he'll be joining us via Zoom, and he's going to talk about a lot of different things. One of the interesting things about Rich is he's been doing a lot with the congressional hearings. He's well connected with the different senators and that are working on that. He's a great guy and a wealth of knowledge. So we're really excited to have him as our first guest speaker. We're hoping we can offer a Zoom to that, but we can't be certain. So we're on social media. So if you didn't see us on socials, we are on Facebook. We're working on Instagram. If there's any TikTokers, we would love to have a TikTok presence, but neither Jer or I are TikTokers. So reach out if you're interested in helping us with that. So has anybody seen this car before?
So now we're finally getting into something interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Enough information stuff.
All right. Does anybody got any questions about MUFON, how it runs, how it works? Not really. Okay, great. Let's get into something we can actually get into.
The fun stuff, right? What you came for. This car is often referred to as the UFO car. And it was the squad car that Val Johnson, a deputy sheriff out of Warren, Minnesota, was in when he had an incident back in 1979. A lot of people in the area here, I'm not sure about Grand Rapids, they've heard about this particular incident. What they probably haven't heard about is that there's a MUFON case, a very similar case in that area that was submitted to MUFON by somebody else. Back in 1979, on August 27th, Val Johnson was driving in a squad car down a lonely, dark road, and he saw a light on the road. He says he initially thought it was some kind of accident or problem, and so as he was going down the road, the light all of a sudden came directly at him. And it actually hit his squad car. Let me back up here.
Is that Val?
So this isn't the best picture for that, but when you look at the squad car, you can see some of the damage. So you can see that the front left headlight has been busted out. You can kind of make out some of the dents on the hood. You can certainly see that the windshield has been smashed. And he had two antennas, and you can't see that in this picture, unfortunately. But the antennas were on springs, and they were both bent at different levels in a 90-degree angle in different directions. Very unusual damage to the squad car. Unfortunately, he did sustain some injuries. So he was treated for what the physician described as welder's burns around his eyes, and he did have some bruising. He also had about 14 minutes of missing time. The squad car clock and his wristwatch did not match up to what the actual time was. And he was out on that road for about 40 minutes or so until backup came to assist him. The car was actually sideways in the road. So very interesting case. You can go and see the car yourself. It's up in Warren, Minnesota at the Marshall County Historical Society. I've been up there a few times. That's one of my photos that I took when I was up there. What is going on in the Red River Valley? Well, there's quite a few cases, actually. I picked a few interesting ones. This is the case that is associated with the Val Johnson incident that most people don't know about. On October 29th in 1979, the witness was driving from Fort Wainwright, can't even say that very well, in Alaska to Fort Snelling. He was a U.S. Army MP, and he was being stationed at a small office that was at Fort Snelling. He was driving cross country with his pregnant wife, and as they entered Minnesota, he had a very similar incident. What he witnessed was a large bright white light hovering above the road ahead of him, and this was just outside of Alvarado, Minnesota. Does anybody know where Alvarado is? So that's about maybe roughly 80 miles north of here, near the North Dakota border. He saw the lights and he was wondering what it was. And then he said it suddenly accelerated right to them. And then as soon as it got right in front of his car, it retreated back to the point where he saw it. And he was very confused by this and wasn't sure what was going on. He decided, as an MP would, a military police officer, he wanted to investigate. He tried to catch the light and kind of danced around a little bit with the light for a few miles. And then eventually he lost sight of it after he passed through Warren, Minnesota. He ended up continuing traveling to the Twin Cities area and spent the night with his sister and mentioned to his sister, him and his wife did. And so the sister said, well, do you have any idea about that other incident up there? You know, Val Johnson in his squad car, and he hadn't heard of that. She filled him in on that, and he apparently ended up having several discussions with Val Johnson and stating that they both agreed it was probably the same object. Now, unfortunately, I can't verify that. Richard Moss was a field investigator that investigated this case, and this was quite a while ago, of course. One thing about Richard Moss is he was the former state director for Minnesota. Unfortunately, before I had a chance to talk to him about this case, he passed away. A lot of that information on his investigation was lost when we lost him. That's the sad part about that. But he did give this case a disposition of unknown other. We have case dispositions in MUFON, and they really are how we are describing what it is. What is the end result of our investigation? So in this particular case, an unknown other means we don't know what it was, and it didn't have a structure. So it was just a light, right? So sometimes people will see a craft or some kind of object, and that has a little bit different disposition name. So this has a disposition of unknown other, since we he doesn't report any structure to the light. The next case, case 118114, you can look up these cases online. You get a little tidbit of information, not a whole lot, but you can definitely look them up through the website. That happened on August 1st in 2021 in Fargo. Fred Kohler was the field investigator that investigated this case. He's also a member of the KEG team that Jared mentioned, where when we have too many cases and can't handle them all, he's one that steps in and takes care of those cases. So unfortunately, Fred's not local. He's out in Pennsylvania. But he did determine that this was an unknown UAV, which stands for aerial vehicle. I found this one to be kind of interesting. There's an image associated with this that I'll show you in just a minute. But the witness states, I was taking pictures of my children at the playground, and I saw what looked like a translucent tic-tac come to an abrupt stop, hover, then change direction. And then he goes on to say he was contacted by a man named Colonel Buck, and that he told him what he saw, and that Colonel Buck said that someone would contact him. I didn't see in the report that Fred Kohler was able to locate this Colonel Buck or find anybody that can corroborate that. But here's the image that he submitted. You can see the little girl. Luckily, she's facing away from the camera, so I didn't have to blur her out. And if you're familiar with Fargo, that's the playground that's in Island Park. And then you can see up at the top there, this strange thing in the sky. This witness submitted maybe 8 or 9 different images, similar to this, but all through different filters. This is the only one that didn't look like he used a filter. Now, I don't know what that is, but I know that Fred has a pretty good idea of how to figure out if a photo has been doctored or anything.
What was the date on that?
August 1st, 2021.
Thanks.
It's an interesting photo. I don't know what that is, and I'm not certain what would cause that in a digital photo. Initially, when I was looking at it, I thought, well, maybe if there was something on the negative or something, but it was definitely a digital photo. So Fred determined that he didn't know what this was, and he determined that there was something solid inside there, which is why he referred to it as a vehicle. Case number 133944, investigated by myself, actually. This is a recent case, and I wanted to make sure I included a recent case. And one of the most interesting things is that the witness was very, very credible. We have a whole range of people that submit things, and we don't base how credible a report is simply by the witness themselves. But this particular witness was an area educator in science. And so I can't say a whole lot more about this person because of confidentiality. But that really increases the credibility of this report, along with the fact that there was 5 witnesses to this. So it wasn't just one person. And that information on those 5 witnesses was provided. It happened in South Moorhead, and it was in a newer development, kind of on the edge of town. Just outside of his home area was Farmfields. He had a really good view and vantage point for what he saw. And he states that a group of 5 of us were sitting in my driveway having a bonfire. The time was 8:22. He was very specific on that. And he could provide evidence to show that it was 8:22. In the eastern sky, about halfway up the horizon, a bright orange-white light appeared. It traveled parallel to the ground. It was moving very fast and appeared to pick up speed as it headed north. No sound, no tail. It just suddenly appeared and suddenly disappeared. And it lasted about 4 to 5 seconds. When I was talking with him, he estimated that the object was probably about a half mile away. Could have been a little farther. He felt it was about 4 to 5 feet in diameter. And he was fairly certain that it increased its speed as it was moving away from him. So that really, in many ways, rolls out something like a meteor. Meteors don't travel reasonably close to the ground and increase speed as they come in. And they usually don't travel parallel to the ground, although there are some exceptions to that. So I found that to be interesting. Off in the distance is Moorhead Airport, but there was no activity near the airport. In fact, there was absolutely no activity at all in that area during the time of the sighting. So there wasn't even movement of the aircraft in the airport there. But of course, there was no I can't even think of the term, transponding air traffic.
About
Tongue twister.
a half hour after sunset then at that time of year.
Yeah, it should have been pretty late. I don't recall offhand. I know I took a look at that. The sun would have been a lower angle at that time.
Sun was still up, but
I believe the sun was still up. It was right around sunset you're getting close to. And that, of course, can, the angle of the sun can really change what an object looks like. So it can make a plane look like a bright sphere light. So that's one of the reasons why we always look at aircraft. Is it possible it was a drone? It's possible, but most people that are operating a drone, drones are pretty small. So to have a light that was that size would be pretty unusual. I did give this a case disposition of unknown other, because again, it's an other. He didn't see any structure. It was just this round kind of orb type light. But a very interesting case. Area sightings in northern Minnesota specifically, and I'll hand this over to Jer, and he'll talk about those.
Case 99742, I was the field investigator on that one. I didn't know we were picking other people's cases. All of these are mine. Anyhow, spring of '69 is just west of the city of Isanti, which is just north of Minneapolis area. Witness was with a couple of friends. One of them had just gotten back from Vietnam, so they decided they're going to go out and just have fun that night. And he did say when this happened that they had not partaken in anything yet. They had no alcohol, no drugs or whatever. It was completely 100% sober. Anyhow, they're driving south along a dark road, probably around 8 or 9 o'clock. He gets to about 500 feet from the corner where they're going to turn left to go to this golf course where they're going to go hang out. And he sees one of the guys in the car looks out the window and sees a big old green light. And he just can't figure it out. I was like, what the heck? They stop the car. The witness jumps out. And of course, he's just dumbfounded. He's looking at this thing. And all he can see is this green light. You can't really see any structure or anything. Just sees this green light. And he said, the unique thing about the light was, it didn't shine like a beacon or spotlight, but it was like looking in a green smoke-filled tube or something. It had depth, but no spot that was brighter than anything else. It was just uniform. They're watching this, and of course, the guys in the car are freaking out. Well, like, get in the car, let's get out of here, But he's like, no, I'm going to sit here and check this out. So he's watching this thing, and it just slowly kind of comes towards him a little bit, and then it turns and goes down the road that was about 500 feet in front of him, and then stops. And it's there for like maybe 30 seconds or so, and then it slowly moves down a little bit further, starts heading north. Then he said he saw like a shimmer start to go around it, like a, lack of anything else, like a force field. You can kind of see like green little shimmer thing going on. And then that thing just bolted off into the sky, out into space. It was really weird. So of course you're like, wow, what in the world was that? Couldn't figure it out. They hop back in the car. They decided they're going to go ahead and just hang out at the golf course and just do what they want anyhow. So as they're driving down before they get to the intersection, they're joking because it stopped. They said, well, maybe they were just dropping somebody off, Sure enough, turned the corner and there was somebody walking down the road, They didn't stop to ask. I mean, you can read about this one on the website. But he didn't stop to ask who that person was or anything. And he kind of regrets not doing that. But that was just wild. So that was that case. Like I said, it happened in 1969, but this was actually my very first case that I investigated. So it was really, really kind of neat. Wow, this one happened in Deer River. I think I got pictures on this one, don't I?
Let's see.
Next slide. Yep, there we go.
Yes.
Okay. So in Deer River, this happened a couple of years ago, before COVID, because I was able to go to this person's house, a cabin actually. And anyhow, they had reported that they had woke up one morning and found these tiny handprints on the mirror. And they couldn't figure out what it was. Of course, this happened a couple of years before they got a hold of us. So by that time, they'd already cleaned the mirror off. They just didn't know who to report it to. So finally, when I got to it, I went out and talked to them about it. And the only thing I could do at that point was just kind of put my hand in comparison there. And you can see my meat hooks there are quite a bit bigger than these right here. So it was interesting. I really wish I could have gotten some DNA on it. It might have been something, and it might have been just there was no kids there, so we don't think it was that. But
My sister lives in California and she called and told me, she said she woke up and there was handprints on her mirror.
really,
She texted me a picture and it was exactly like that.
no kidding. Can you text me that picture? Do you still have it?
She probably hasn't yet.
Okay, yeah, because
Yeah.
I'd like to compare it too.
Yeah.
That would be
and,
awesome.
This has been going on around the country.
Wow.
There's other cases, handprints on the mirror.
So we could just get some DNA off of that. It'd be amazing, you know?
Wonderful, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And we do have a lab that we can do that in, but, I mean, like I said, when I got there, it was too late. It was already cleaned up and that was about all I could really do, but you can definitely see the difference in the two.
Mhm.
So that one's interesting.
Is it demonic or alien or who knows?
Yes, sir.
Mostly?
Yeah, I don't know.
Have you talked to this guy since then?
Not since.
Okay, I know about this.
Oh, okay.
I've actually been out there. He says he's had some other things happen with lights. This is up by the Cottonwood campground.
I think so.
Yeah, it's, I'm a Bigfoot researcher.
So I was gonna say there's a
Okay.
Bigfoot up there too.
Yeah,
Yeah, because he was talking about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, we've had a lot of interesting hits up there, so.
Okay, did you go out by his place and check out any of the Bigfoot stuff he was reporting?
Yeah, actually, back in October, we did a public night hike out there. We had actually responses with wood dogs,
Okay,
so.
awesome. Okay, just for everybody's information, MUFON doesn't like us talking about Bigfoot and paranormal. I like talking about Bigfoot and paranormal, so we won't tell headquarters what we're talking about. We'll just leave it at that. So
See, at least curious about the connection.
yeah, I should give him a call, see how he's doing, because it sounds like there's a lot more stuff going on.
Mhm.
Thank you for that. Okay, next one. Here we go. Of course, most of mine are all historical. So case 111725 happened in 1971 and again in 1972. The Arrowhead region of Minnesota, because this person does not want to be known. Started off as lights in the sky and turned into something completely different. And I'll talk about the dead circle. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide, please. When you initially, okay, so this one I didn't get through MUFON channels. I had actually answered an ad in a magazine that I saw on the North Shore when I was up on vacation once. And it was a friend of mine from the cities. It was a Bigfoot researcher that had put in there that, if you'd seen anything weird or whatever, give me a call. So I'm just thinking, well, maybe I could get a connection to this guy. And, if they've seen some weird stuff, I can investigate for them. Sure enough, you got some weird stuff and you're going to play it anyhow, aren't you? Okay. So anyhow, he had some weird stuff up there. We get a hold of this guy, and this is what he had recorded a couple of nights prior to me talking to him. And this was above Lake Superior, and you can just see the lights there. It's kind of hard to see, so it's bouncing around. But the lights just kind of turning on, turning off, dancing around with each other and stuff like that. Just really strange. I looked on, I believe it was the NICAP website, or NUFOR, whatever, National UFO Research Center. And there was another sighting almost exactly like this down in Texas at about the same time, within a year or two. But anyhow, this is how it started, was this. So we went out and did some measurements and stuff like that and did what I could do to figure this one out. But basically this was an unknown UAV, an unknown aerial vehicle. So then I asked the question, says, has anything weird ever happened to you in your lifetime? And the floodgates opened.
And what?
And then the floodgates opened. Yeah, and then it started happening. So I think the next slide should have, there we go. Okay, so back in 1971, him and a friend were not on the woods. This is actually on the property. And he actually had a shack, I think was over here that he had built. They were teenagers at the time. They built the shack. They're real proud of it. And they're out there one night, just him and a friend outside or whatever. And they saw this light coming in at them. And, just at first we're like, wow, it's just a light. But then it started coming closer to them. So they ran into the shack, closed the door, backs up against the walls and everything. And whatever it was, it got really close because you could see the light coming through the cracks, in the wood and everything. And then the nail holes, you could see crack, or you could see the light coming in all over the shack. Well, that lasted maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes. He doesn't remember. I mean, it was 50 years ago. Then the light went out and it was gone. It was done. Nothing. Well, about a year later, they decided that they're going to go do a sleepover out in the shack. I'm sure they've probably done it several other times too, you know. But they decided this night they were going to go out and do the sleepover in the shack. So they do whatever teenagers do, go out there, have fun. They lay down and go to sleep. There's a trap door. They're on the second story of it. So it's kind of like a 2-story. There's a trap door where a younger brother was sleeping, and then the witness, and then another person, the same person on the first one, were sleeping. And 2, 3 in the morning, something like that. Again, this big old bright light comes and just shines through the window. And they're like, what in the world's going on? They hear something or someone enter the bottom of the shack, and they start to hear things just crashing and banging, like this thing is just tearing everything up. They didn't know what in the world was going on. And the next thing you know, the younger brother that's sleeping over this trap door, all of a sudden the trap door starts going up and down. They're like, holy heck, it was like something out of, you know, Jason Voorhees or something, you know? So they all hogpile on top of this trap door to get this thing to stop. The witness thinks it lasted about 5 minutes. Brother thinks it lasted about 20 minutes. Nobody knows, you know, but they're up all night long, you know. This thing went on for, you know, like 5, 20 minutes, whatever it was. And then it all disappeared and went away. Well, they're up all night long. Finally, when daybreak starts coming, they start building up the courage to go downstairs and say, all right, what did this thing do to our shack? It's got to be ransacked, right? So they go downstairs and nothing has moved. Completely pristine, like nobody had ever even been there. And that day he got a hold of a bulldozer and knocked that thing down. and refused to go back out there. But the weird thing is, you can see right here, the 16-foot circle that Ann and I went out and checked out, nothing grows there, and nothing had grown there since that second incident. You know, I asked the guy, I said, well, was the ground burnt or something like that? I mean, do you remember? But he's like, 50 years ago, and I never went back. I don't know.
Be nice to have a soil sample.
Well, we did a soil sample. And in the lower levels, about 6 to 8 inches down, there was a higher level of carbonate, which just means a high heat source had done something. But that's all we got out of it. You know,
No
so
radiation or anything.
no. We did background radiation checks. We did anything we could think of. But you got to remember, we did this 50 years after it happened. You know, so it's kind of hard to tell. But that was a very interesting case. And that one didn't come in through the normal channels, but you know, we got it on our case management system for MUFON, so I was able to do it. That one was kind of fun. You got anything to add about that one, Anna? Because you were out there with us.
I think Jared's right. This was a really interesting case. It isn't often that we get a chance to go out and do an on-site field investigation where we're taking soil samples and whatnot. This gave Jared and I an opportunity to get to know each other, for one, and to work out in the field. You can see that it's a little tough in this picture, but you can see some pieces of paper, and those are defining different quadrants. There is string there. I don't know if you can see that very well in this image. So that we really want to be very specific on where we're taking the soil sample. Not only is that measured, but it's also measured to azimuth. We know exactly what direction that is. One of the reasons why we want to do that is that what happens if in this quadrant here, we found something interesting, right? But maybe it was very small, maybe it was on a microscopic level. How do we find that exact location again without digging up the entire circle? It's really important when we go out and do an investigation like this, that we are really as exact as possible and that somebody can come behind us and repeat that. Maybe 5 years down the road, an investigator will want to look at something like that. We never know when we're doing it. This case, other than the fact that there was evidence that there had been high heat there, we didn't get a lot of good results. Certainly, there's been forest fires and other things that could account for that. But Jared did take multiple samples as well as control samples from outside of the area. And we sent those down to our MUFON lab in Missouri. MUFON does have a lab. It's pretty well equipped now. So we have the ability to test for things like that.
So where was that in proximity to
The shack, this is the north-south line right here. The shack was 50 feet to the northwest. So kind of off in here, you know, so this is 50 years worth of growth right there. It was not necessarily an open field at the time, but it was relatively open. So,
How recent is that photo?
when did we do that, Anna? Do you remember the date? Was that 19? No, that had to have been 2020. Yeah, it was 20.
I think it was in 2020, yes.
Years, no, nothing.
No, it's 2021 because we got snowed out in 2020.
Yep, that's true.
Yep, that was, this is near the fall of 2020. No, spring 2021. Sorry, I'll get it right sooner or later. Spring 2021 because we had to wait for winter to get over with.
Yes, as I recall, we did have to wait for the snow to melt, and arrange a time that we could both be there.
Yep.
One little side note on these images. Oh, late last winter, early spring, Marchish, I think. Anybody familiar with Ancient Aliens?
Oh, yeah.
I figured a few of you might be. They did an entire episode on MUFON, and they were supposed to use a couple of our images from this investigation. They didn't use it. It ended up getting cut, but we may see that in another episode going forward. I forgot to mention that to you, Jer. So you might see Jer and I in an image, or Jer taking some soil samples. So if you see something that looks like this, yes, that is us on a future Ancient Aliens show.
They better pay me. Okay, I think that's it.
Yep. So we'd like to open the floor for a few.
You're still here? The meeting's over. Go. Go.